This is Ambition Today, a podcast about entrepreneurs, creators, investors, and builders who ambitiously change the world. On each episode, we explore the hardships and heroism of everyday life to reveal the key moments which leave behind a lasting legacy. Today, we are joined by Adeo Ressi. He is the founder and CEO of the TheFunded Institute, which is the world's premier launch stage accelerator. This is Ambition Today.
These are the entrepreneurs, creators, investors, and builders who ambitiously change to the world. Explore the hardships and heroisms of everyday life while we reveal the key moments to leave behind a lasting legacy. This is Ambition Today with Kevin Siskar.
What's up, world? I am Kevin Siskar, and you are listening to Ambition Today. Make sure you subscribe to our website, siskar.co, to make sure you never miss the latest Ambition Today episodes, such as the last episode when we talked to Andrew Weinrich. He's the founder at Andrew's Roadmaps, and he's the chairman at Indicative. But today I'm really excited. We are joined by Adeo Ressi. He's the founder and CEO of the TheFunded Institute, a place that is very dear to my own heart. It is the world's premier launch stage accelerator. Adeo, welcome to Ambition Today.
Thank you very much. Andrew's a good friend of mine.
Awesome. So where are we? Where are we today?
Palo Alto, California, at the TheFunded Institute headquarters.
Love it. I love coming out here. It's so different from New York, but I want to start in New York because I know that's where you grew up. Where'd you grow up in New York, and what was that like?
I grew up on the Upper West Side. And New York was not as nice back then, so people got robbed and things like that on a regular
Yeah, this was
basis.
the 70s and 80s were a hard time. These graffiti-covered subway cars. This is a rough time for New York.
Even, what now are some of the nicer areas of New York, like Soho, was scary. And then Alphabet City was even scarier. And, fast forward to today, and these are some of the nicer places in the city.
Yeah, now Alphabet City is all breweries, and it's fun to hang out in.
Yeah, still no subway access.
The Second Avenue subway finally opened, which is kind of nice. Okay, so you grew up in New York. I read when you were younger, you went to this futuristic city, Acrosanti. What was that experience like, and was there anything from that experience that you still kind of carry with you today?
Sure. Well, so to take a step back, New York was a pretty rough place to grow up.
Okay.
You would regularly get mugged, get in fights on the street. Fights would break out at parties where you would go as a teenager. So it was not the easiest place to grow up. And then, you always dreamed of better ways to live, better ways to grow up. And so that got me interested in architecture and urban design, and that's why I went out to Arcosanti to see how some of the different ways of living were being constructed consciously versus organically. And Arcosanti is a conscious community designed to foster real better living styles where everyone's building the actual city and contributing to food production and everything else. But it was a little too idealistic, and as a result, it didn't work really well.
Yeah, but I love the dichotomy there with New York. So I also so after that, you went to the University of Pennsylvania. In the new biography by Ashley Vance, which some of you may have read, there's a story about you and your new college roommate who happened to be Elon Musk. You guys threw some entrepreneurial parties to fund your way through college. And then famously, you went with him on the trip to try and buy the first SpaceX rockets. So, one of the themes of the show is the steps people take on a path to, achieving greatness. What's it been like to be firsthand witness to the rise of Iron Man? And what are some takeaways from that for the audience?
Oh, yeah. Elon's a great man, always has been, both in terms of his intellect and his moral compass. We were throwing parties in college. I had a drawer filled with cash from various fees that we were collecting, whether it be to admission, et cetera. And Elon was the kind of person that if you handed your wallet to, even back then when we were all poor, you could be guaranteed that it would be handed back to you with everything intact, and every penny, every cent, every dollar.
Yeah.
No worries whatsoever. And that really hasn't changed one bit in the many years that I've known him. And back then would have been a good test because we were all broke. So, and then, sometimes we had cash from the different events, but it would be very tempting to say, oh man, I'm really hungry. I have Adeo's wallet. But with that said, yeah, always been trustworthy, always been morally guided correctly. And it doesn't surprise me at all how successful he's been.
So you think so morality plays a pretty deep role in success, you think, and keeping the compass straight throughout your life and your career?
That's a tough question to answer because I can't speak for other people, but when you're creating a company, or at least when I'm creating a company, a company is a collection of agreements. Right. And I say, okay, please work for me and I will pay you. So that's essentially an agreement. You're going to give me work and I'm going to give you money. Or, hey, I will partner with you. You're going to distribute my product and I'm going to help you in this way. That's another agreement. So your word is your bond when you're running a company. And that bond is this collection of agreements that makes the company happen. And so it's very important that you have that underlying honesty and it's not necessarily morality. You don't necessarily have to have a moral compass, but you definitely are creating an entity based on your word. And if people don't trust you or you're not honest, you run into problems really fast.
Yeah, it's good leadership. And so you've actually built and sold quite a few companies over the years. I know predominantly today we talk about Founder Institute, but I just wanted to bring these up for the sake of time, I'll quickly summarize. So in 1997, America Online purchased Total New York, which you founded. In 2000, you sold Method 5 to Xceed for $88 million. In 2007, you sold Game Trust to Real Networks. You were a board member of the X Prize. What was it like building those companies over the years? And I think through there, you also moved from New York to the Valley. Tell me a little bit about that change as well.
Yeah, so there's some other companies in there that I founded, ran, or sold, smaller. Well, I'll say this, which probably isn't the wisest thing to say publicly, but, I don't really recommend selling your company. I've done it a lot. I've bought and sold 25 plus companies, and 100% of the time, the company that you have created and worked very hard to build will somehow perish in an acquisition. The Total New York acquisition was quite large. It was almost it was $750 million approximately. It had become AOL Digital Cities, and it was bought by AOL. It was called AOL Digital Cities, but it wasn't actually owned by AOL in full. So when AOL bought it outright, you would think, okay, you have something called AOL Digital Cities that's going to persist, and it didn't. Maybe lasted a few more years, but eventually they sunsetted that sub-brand. And, even AOL itself is now in trouble. So you can imagine there was a time where Yahoo bought every company under the sun. They were the big acquirer in the Valley, buy. If you were like, if I sell to Yahoo, it would be the biggest thing ever. And where are all those companies? They're pretty much gone. I mean, even Delicious, which was one of the huge brands of its time, sold to Yahoo. That's basically MIA.
Yeah.
And Yahoo itself is in trouble.
So, I mean, it really shows, too, like that to the point of like how important the role of the founder is in a company and, long term, not just at the point of inception.
Yeah. I mean, look, so you got one of two plays in the world today, right? You're going to build something that's going to last, or you're going to build something to sell. And I would recommend that, everybody go out there with the goal of building something to last. And if you fail in that goal, then you sell, right? And the mistake that I made in the past is that I had businesses that were really built to last and doing very well. And unfortunately, that's when everyone comes over and is like, hey, we want to buy you. And then it's really tempting to sell.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't have the experience, knowledge, or guidance, a lot of times what's happening is companies that are being built to last are selling for one reason or another, and then suffering as a result. So, a great story there is with a good friend of mine, Tony Say, and Zappos. I don't really believe that Tony ever wanted to sell Zappos. He had a board of directors. He had a very aggressive buyer and on and sold. Now, in the deal, he was able to maintain a lot of the Zappos culture and a lot of the Zappos ethos, but it's still Amazon, right? And in fact, you go and visit Zappos and they'll be like, yeah, this is an Amazon thing. And they kind of are like, we would never do it that way, but Amazon makes us do it that way. So, as a founder, staying true to yourself and trying to build something to last is key.
So, and I like that, the lessons that you've taken from that, you've kind of worked to share over the years. So after, all of these companies, I think it was, probably the end of the 2000s, you started something called TheFunded, correct?
Yes.
And so tell me what was TheFunded, what was the goal, and you were like anonymous, right?
Yeah. So I had a really terrible series of experience with professional investors. So by the age of 30, I had sold about close to $2 billion worth of companies, created and or sold, or taken public for that matter. A lot of people are like, wow, you must be so incredibly wealthy. Now, at that time, I was the wealthiest person that I knew, but I wasn't like wealthy by, any real standard. Like I was the wealthiest 29-year-old that I knew, which isn't saying very much. But, and that's another sad fact is that you can build billions of dollars worth of value and, not be that wealthy. So a lot of people will look at like founders that are running unicorns. And I can tell you something that for the most part, the founders that are running unicorns are not flying around on private jets and buying private islands. They're probably living fairly modest lifestyles because these things are not liquid. And so I had figured that, hey, I'm going to deal with investors. I'm like one of the more successful people I know. It should be fairly easy. And it just was not.
Yeah.
I don't think, it's easier. And in fact, we had Aaron Bali, who built $1 billion company, went back out to raise money and said on stage yesterday or the day before, it was super hard. And he thought it would be a lot easier. And I had that mentality as well. It's like, hey, look, I've got, for the time, nearly $2 billion in value created by the time I was 29. And this is a long time ago. And $2 billion back then is a lot of money. Now it seems a lot more common. And it was super hard. And by the way, the investors didn't treat me with any particularly extra respect. So they were rude. They were devious. They were dishonest. They were, I can keep going.
Yeah.
The abuses were rampant. And then I would go to my friends and I'd be like, you're pretty successful. What's happening with you? And they're like, it's horrible. And like everyone I talked to would say how terrible their experiences were dealing with investors. So finally I was like, someone has to do something about this. And I published.
That was TheFunded.
Yeah. And I published an anonymous platform so me and my friends could surface all the bad behavior and isolate the worst, parties propagating that bad behavior to avoid them, basically.
So this was basically like a Yelp for investors, right? VCs, angel investors.
Kind of, except anyone can walk off the street and write a review of a restaurant. We only allowed we screened every single person that applied, and we only let people in that we thought had a chance to get funded or were already funded. So the funded membership was literally people were like, it should be called the unfunded. And yet they were getting pretty accurate and mean reviews. And when you actually looked at it, it was the entire, 15,000 person database. Now it's in the 20s. We're all funded entrepreneurs writing very candid reviews about
of
the
their
people.
Investors.
Yeah. And, look, it ended. I always knew TheFunded was a temporary thing. It would end the abuses. So once you turn the light on in a room with a bunch of nasty things in it, they all scamper away and the room's clean, right? And they hide in their little holes and dark corners. And then, you kind of like, oh, well, the room's clean. Turn the light off, go away. The cockroaches, everything else come out. So unfortunately, the light was on for a while. It cleaned the room out. We sort of are like, I was literally going to write mission accomplished and take TheFunded down. And I was like, that's like a George Bush moment right there. And then it's like so not accomplished. It's just horrifically embarrassing. But I was at one point seriously considering that. And I can tell you right now that the abuses are resurfacing.
Creeping back in.
And, of course, they're not the same. So you're not getting – back then you would have something called like a participating preferred, and it would be a 5x liquidation preference. So if an investor put in $10 million, they would get 5x, $50 million back before you got a single dollar. And then it was participating. So what would happen is that if you sold a company for $60 million and they owned 50%, let's say, $50 million would go back to them.
Yeah.
And then they would get $5 million from the remaining 10, half of that, and you would get the last 5.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, because you're the one that kind of built it all. So let's take a quick break. After this, I want to talk a little bit more about the Founder Institute and what you learned from TheFunded and how that grew into the Founder Institute. So we'll be right back. We're here with Adeo Ressi talking about his journey to create companies all over the world with the Founder Institute. We'll be right back.
Okay.
This is Ambition Today.
If you're enjoying the show, then please leave a review in the iTunes Store, Breaker, Stitcher, Google Music, wherever you're listening. And if you don't know how to do that, you can just visit sysguard.co/review, and we'll show you how you can leave your review in 3 quick steps. Thank you so much for all the help. And Ambition Today is happy to partner with TopTall. Say you have the idea in your head that you just can't shake, but you need someone to build it. Visit toptall.com/ambition today for a free 2-week trial with the top 3% of software developers and designers. You own all the code, anything built from the trial, and you can get a lot done in 2 weeks, as someone from the team will reach out to you almost immediately. That's toptal.com/ambition today to get started today. And Ambition Today is happy to partner with the Founder Institute, the world's premier launch stage startup accelerator. Normally, during this time, I read a little bit about entrepreneurial DNA and what it means to have it and the test. But we have with us here today Adeo Ressi. So I wanted to quickly ask you, Adeo, 35,000 people have taken this test, and as a result of that data, we've built out a few personality profiles. What have you seen from so many people taking this test and applying to the program and starting on the journey of entrepreneurship?
Well, the test itself predicts very well some traits that are indicative of success in entrepreneurs. So if you spend approximately 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes and you take a series of what will seem to be somewhat strange questions, we'll be able to give you a profile of the kind of entrepreneur that you're going to be and give you a rough estimate of how successful you're going to be as well. So just getting in the program means that you have crossed a certain threshold where your likelihood of being successful is fairly high. And then we actually have certain things where we'll say, hey, you're in the top 25% of test takers, or you're very exceptional. Plus, we can categorize you as a visionary type of entrepreneur or a hustler.
Yeah.
They're different categories.
So what are the top 2 things you look for in entrepreneurs?
Well, the DNA test looks for certain characteristics, and then we look for other things on a manual review, if you will. So the test looks for what you'll call openness and fluid intelligence as the big indicators.
Yeah.
Openness is basically how honestly you perceive the world. So if you look around and it's, cloudy out and you're like, it's cloudy and it seems like it's about to rain, that's a very, open and kind of brutally honest perception of what's going on. If you look around and it's kind of cloudy out and you're like, well, maybe it will clear up and like everything will be great. And that's a less open, you're essentially seeing the world through these rose-colored glasses, as they're sometimes referred to. And the problem with seeing the world through rose-colored glasses is that as an entrepreneur, you really need to see the world for what it is. If you think your machines are running great and your factory is doing awesome and your expansion is going as planned, and in fact it's not, that can be very dangerous. Similarly, fluid intelligence is your ability to rapidly learn and apply rule sets. And
I think this is really important.
Yeah, so I would say fluid intelligence is in some way more important than openness, but they interplay with one another. So and some other traits. But fluid intelligence is rapidly learning and applying rule sets. So I didn't have any problems yet today. The day is still early here in Palo Alto, but average entrepreneurs see dozens of problems a day. Their server could go down. Oh, actually, I did see a problem. We're having an email bug. And, they're like, we need to fix this email bug right now. And I'm like, well, I'm going on a podcast. Let's work on it in a few minutes. And it's not... It's a logic bug, so I'm going to have to sit down, learn the logic of why the email bug is occurring, work with the developer, redo the logic, and fix it, right? Then I'll probably go into a staff meeting, right? Yeah. So, and then I'm going to be in staff meeting mode, and then I'm going to have lunch with an investor, and I'll be in investor mode. So you're constantly switching your mindset from one thing to another all the time as an entrepreneur.
Nice. I love it. I think fluid intelligence and openness play a huge role. If you want to go learn your DNA profile, fi.co/join/ambition to apply and take the test today. Let's get back to this episode of Ambition Today.
Visit Ambition Today online at syscard.co and follow the show on social media at Ambition Today.
Welcome back. We are here with Adeo Ressi. We've been talking about his journey through entrepreneurship and the influences it's had on him over time. So you built several companies, realized there was bad players, built TheFunded to help correct that. The lights went on. It got a little better. After TheFunded, I feel like there was more takeaways that you kind of parlayed into the Founder Institute. What is the Founder Institute for, a refresher for the audience, and how did it get started, and where's it going?
Yeah, so I was running the TheFunded so I'd sold my last company and been abused by venture capitalists pretty badly in the deal. I was the second larger investor in the company, and I was the only investor that lost money. So, and that's not entirely uncommon either, by the way, for entrepreneurs, because when the time comes to sell the business, the investors become very greedy and difficult to work with, so they'll squeeze you out. And I'd been taking a break and essentially running TheFunded full time. And what I realized was, it's great. I'm helping entrepreneurs, but really there aren't enough entrepreneurs getting funded. And so the core problem was, entrepreneurs aren't creating fundable companies at scale. And also there was a lot of isolation in the funding as well. So there was New York was big, Silicon Valley was big. At the time, Boston was big. And then Europe was super small, and Asia was even smaller. And you're looking around and saying, there's a bigger problem in the world today. And then while I'm sort of examining the fact that funding was super isolated, not a lot of companies are getting funded, and that's a problem, then the financial collapse happened of 2008. And at that point I said, I need to do something about this. And so I thought long and hard about how to fix it. And essentially my conclusion was you just have to start better companies.
Yeah.
And if you start a lot of really good companies, then there'll be more funding, more support, more innovation all around the world. It will not only make the world a better place, but you solve a chicken and egg problem. So the chicken and egg problem that the world has today is if you go to a city that has no entrepreneurs in technology and you say, we're going to create entrepreneurs in technology, a lot of times people will say, well, there's no money, there's no infrastructure. How are they going to get started? And so then you face the chicken and egg situation. Well, it turns out that we went to lots of places like that, like Kabul, Afghanistan, or Bogota, Colombia, 6-7 years ago, blah, 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 blah. And what happens is once you start creating companies that are good, then co-working spaces open and angel funds get started and government programs open up to give them money and provide them with tax breaks, and then venture funds get started. So it all, step one, there has to be good companies.
Yeah.
Step two, all the infrastructure comes into play. So our view at the Founder Institute is we're going to go at the very beginning. We're going to take someone off the street. We're going to retrain them to think, act, and be, think like, act like, and therefore eventually be entrepreneurs and successful ones at that.
Well, I love, one of my favorite things about it is, if you think about what you learn from TheFunded and your own companies, right? And basically taking founders at such an early stage and teaching them what they need to do things the right way, right? And doing it right from early on saves you all this money, bad liquidation preferences down the road, right? And giving them that access early on, because without it, I see even today, right, in 2017, founders, they have Quora and books, but they kind of just meander and jump co-working space, and they get, a meeting every 3 weeks and they grow a little bit. And I love that at such an early stage, it really helps people plug in, get access to great CEOs, mentors, make the right decisions early on to set them up for later success. And so I know how they do that, but for the audience listening, what is the process for Founder Institute at a high level?
Well, when you're in the program, I presume you're asking. Yeah. So here's what I would say. Like, you can't, I don't know why this is, by the way, Kevin. So you pointed out something that's really an interesting observation. So it's very, very hard to be an entrepreneur. So really what the Founder Institute does is condition you. And, I got conditioned by the real world, the hard way. And that's not what I would recommend for most people. I mean, the early story, part of the reason I wasn't the absolute richest person that I knew when I had built nearly $2 billion worth of companies by the age of 29 is people ripped me off and stole my equity, like frequently. Yeah. And I had no idea what I was doing. And so it happened.
Prior to 2008, like finding this information, we had the internet, but it was early days and it wasn't as available as it is today.
No one knew anything.
Yeah.
So, I like to say, a company is a collection of agreements, but it's also a large collection of people who are trying to screw you at every possible turn. And mark my words, if there's $1 in your pocket, there's 100 people waiting to take it out of it. And when you're an entrepreneur, a lot of people perceive that you have lots of dollars in your pocket. So now that's gotten a lot better. But back then, it was just brutal. So what we do is we condition you for success without actually going and having people take money out of your pocket or beat you with a stick or whatever else they do. So for example, we have sessions once a week at night, and these seasoned CEOs come in and they talk to you about their experiences building a business. Now, you don't learn like accounting, right? You learn how a CEO thinks about accounting, right? And that's really a big difference, right? Sure, you learn some basic accounting things,
Yeah, totally.
but you're more learning the mindset of someone who is building a fast-growing business, and that's you're conditioning your mind to think like a successful CEO. Then we give you work to do to build your business. Now this is like, and you do that for the remainder of the week. And these are hard things. Like you're doing probably 12 months of a normal entrepreneur's work in about 3.5 months. But we sequence it out. We give you time. We give you resources. And we're like, just keep pounding at it. It takes about 30 hours a week. So you're not even full time on it. And that is important because it's like pushing you to move quickly. One of the big problems that entrepreneurs have is I'm a marketing guy. I like marketing. So what am I going to do? Marketing. Well, what do you need to do? Lots of other things like write code or like hire people. You probably need to do as more hiring than marketing. In fact, you probably need to hire a marketing person. And so by forcing people through the week to do lots and lots of things that they don't want to do.
They don't want to do, and they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And so that's a huge part of it too. Sometimes founders come in, they think they're so set and they're ready to fundraise and hit that Series B basically out of the starting gate, right? They think they're three rounds ahead of themselves. We just were talking about
a founder. We have a founder in the program, in my program right now, who went to an event and is, don't get me wrong, very smart, talented guy, and he's trying to pitch like Steve Jurvetson and some famous VCs, and he's not even raised an angel round.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm saying, listen, that does happen. Occasionally that happens. But that is I like to say hope is not a strategy. And this is like the lottery tickets are not a strategy either. If you're counting on paying your rent by playing the lottery, you're in trouble. So, don't make lottery tickets your strategy. So back to the final and third thing is we break everyone into groups and they sort of commiserate along the way. And what that does is, so one of the most important things that you can have as a founder is a support network and a shoulder to cry on when things get tough. Because they get tough daily.
Yeah, totally.
And it's now you're not going to cry on someone's shoulder every day, but there are peaks and troughs, and some peaks are big and some troughs are big. And when you're in a big trough, you better believe that having someone that you can talk to is a mission critical to your success. And through this process of the mentorship, the assignments and the peers, that's essentially conditioning you to think, act, and have a network of an entrepreneur, allowing you to succeed later on in your career.
And one of my favorite things is how we support grads post-graduation too. We don't just kind of dump them after the accelerator. We support them long-term, which I love. So
I wish, and the sad thing is, and this is a problem for every program, but we're actually probably now, I used to say we were a 6 out of 10, and now I think we're probably like an 8 or 9 out of 10, maybe an 8 out of 10. When it's like graduating from kindergarten, how close do you keep in touch with your kindergarten teacher? Not. So we are the kindergarten of entrepreneurship, maybe first grade, something like that. But what we do that's a little bit different now than almost any other program is we really do have levels of engagement with our graduates. So we have pretty close connections with companies that are worth hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. And we're doing things now where we're going to have even closer connections with those companies.
Well, and I love that. And that's something that's, I'm a grad from years ago too. So that's something that is kind of dear to me. So as director in New York, I put a lot of effort into that. 153 portfolio companies in New York now, and they all help each other, which is kind of amazing. So I know we have probably a few founders to grads from New York, other cities listening right now. What's one piece of advice you have for FI grads, entrepreneurs a little further down the journey?
Wow. there's a lot of pieces of advice. It depends on how far the journey that you go down the road. So, I would say if you're a little further down the journey, so maybe your company's anywhere from 9 to 18 months old, maybe 24 months old, there's a lot of shiny things in the sand that look very appealing to you and may be a cause for you to think about pivoting or adjusting the business model or even, going after them like almost a lottery ticket. I can tell you that most of the shiny things in the sand are not diamonds. They're knives waiting to kill you. So you got to be very, very, very diligent to remain focused on your core mission in that 9 to 18, maybe 24-month window, because your company's gaining a little bit of momentum. And there are lots of pretty things all around you, and they're very appealing, right? You're like, I can make so much money if I just did these 4 things. And it's like, no. So, part of the reason why the Founder Institute's in almost approaching 200 cities, and we'll create that well over 1,000 grads a year now, probably closer to 2, is because we've been laser focused on one thing the entire history of the company. We've really never done anything else. And that's all we do. And you look at some other, and I'm going to tell you something. I look around the Founder Institute and I'm like, yeah, we could do this better and we could do that better. But at the end of the day, we're all, it's one thing that we're doing.
Right.
And there are components of it that I think we could do better. But imagine if we were doing like 5 things, right? Then there'd be hundreds of things that we could do better in each of the 5 major areas. But since our whole history, we've been doing one thing. Now, doing one thing well is complicated. We've got the admissions test. I think we could be doing that better. We've got the program, the website, this, that, all this stuff. And we're making improvements on everything. But just doing one thing involves—
There's plenty of work as it is, yeah.
There's we got, just to give you a sense, we have about 20 people in our HQ, about 500 directors, and 9,200 mentors.
Wow.
Just to do that one thing.
Yeah.
Right? So, doing one thing isn't easy.
Yeah. It's important to go deep and not wide. Totally.
Yeah, and stay focused.
So one of the things that I know we announced recently that I wanted to talk about, obviously the whole VC space is shifting. Mobile has peaked a little bit. You recently announced, I think this week, the Star Fellow Initiative. Can you talk a little bit about that real quick?
Sure. So one of the things we want to start doing at the Founder Institute, again, and it's related to the one thing that we do, is inspire professionals in a vertical categories to launch businesses. So you could almost look at it like, generally speaking, the Founder Institute says, if you're thinking of starting a business, whatever industry you're in, come on in and we'll help you. So now we're starting to go a little bit more directed and say, okay, if you're thinking to start a space or space-related business, come apply to the Founder Institute. We'll give you a free course fee if you get accepted, and getting accepted is not easy. And then we're going to provide you with some specialized mentors who work in the entrepreneurial space field, as well as introductions to key partners, including funding partners like Draper Fisher when you graduate and are ready. And the idea there is—
It's amazing.
Yeah, well, the idea there is that there's— and we'll do other verticals in the future. We started with space because we have 0 graduates working in space and space related companies, so it's very easy to measure the effect. It's like we have almost 3,000 companies that have graduated from the Founder Institute, and in almost any other vertical that we would do, there are lots of grads. So it's hard to say what's the net effect? Was it natural growth or—
and it'll be easy to measure here. Yeah,
this will be very easy to measure.
I love it, and I'm excited. I think
well, you're wearing a SpaceX hat, and I have my SpaceX hat right over there.
I have my collection of nerdy startup hats. I got my SpaceX hat, my Tesla hat. All right. Anyway, so I love it. So I want to jump real quick to the Ambition Today question of the day. If you want to hear your question on future episodes, you can hit me up on Twitter at @thesyscar or go to our website and drop the question. So actually, Adeo, I crowdsourced this question from our team. So I've been in the office the last few days, and I've been asking, what does everyone want to know from Adeo?
Oh.
And so, some of them already knew the answer, but they said it was a great question, and I should get your answer on air. So what is the end game for Founder Institute and all your life's work? Where do you see this and the world going in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years?
Well, I like the fact that you said 20, 30, 40, 50 years, first off, because I think that's the time scale that I'm hoping to operate in, right? And so I think if you ask an average startup, where do you see the company in 20, 30, 40, or 50 years, they're like, what the hell are you talking about, man? I'm making like dog food social media app or something like that. I have no idea. So I actually believe I want the Founder Institute to be around in 100 years, and that's actually a very challenging goal to do, because you really need to have a different kind of mindset when building the organization. If you're thinking in the 100-year time scale, right? So a lot of companies today are built to go public. And they're built to or sell, right, which we talked about earlier in the podcast. What I'm trying to do is think about how can we create a structure that persists for a long time, and there's structural components to the Founder Institute to set it up to exist for a long time, and then there's been a bit of a cult of personality around me, which I'm trying to ratchet down a little bit so that we can have other leaders within the Founder Institute take it forward for years and years and years. And we've also been doing things like testing, setting up in like almost like FI clones in China, so that we can see if our model can be run independently without us, and it's going okay, and we're learning from those experiments. So to be very precise on your answer, where I'd like to see us in, let's say, 100 years, not 20, 40, or an interim to that, is I'd like to see us as a best practices institution for entrepreneurship in the world today, really taking the people who are best suited to be entrepreneurs in the world for whatever reason, and giving them a very, very easy path to create their vision with the greatest amount of success possible. And because we've had such an important role, we have such a large I guess you could call it an endowment, if you will, that we'll be able to do, greater amounts of thought and research into that area, greater amounts of support, and really be the gold standard for people that want to start a business pretty much anywhere in the world. I do think, by the way, there is a size of city where we can operate in threshold. I'm not sure where it is, but based on our experiments to date, my belief it's probably like 200,000 to 400,000 people range. So I'd also like to, in that 100-year time scale, that every thriving ecosystem with a few 100,000 people in it will have chapters as well.
I can't wait. That's amazing. So we will have you back on the podcast in the year 3017, and we will check in. Well, if you're still listening, I want to thank you for listening, being with us today. The show notes, which include everything we talked about, are up on my website, syscar.co. If you love this episode, share it on Facebook, Breakers, tweet me or Adeo with your favorite quote, and we will respond. If you love Ambition Today, think about joining the show's back channel. It's full of exclusive access reserved for the best fans of the show, which is why I'm only mentioning it at the end. Thank you for listening and being one of our fans. Adeo, thank you for coming on the pod today. Where can people find out more about you or Founder Institute?
At Adeo Ressi or fi.co. fi.co is adeoressi.com as well. I'm pretty easy to find.
I know you're pretty active on Twitter too, so check out Adeo on Twitter. Stay curious, everyone, and I will see you all on the next episode of Ambition Today.
Thanks for listening to Ambition Today. Be sure to visit syscar.co to get all the information from this episode and more great content. Until next time, stay curious, everyone.